Spend your Saturdays with slapstick and cereal. Here's your look at the brand new NECA Toys Toony Terrors Killer Clowns from Outer Space Shorty. Bring the fun of Saturday morning cartoons to your horror collection with these adorable little creeps. Pick your favorites or collect them all and make every day Toony Terror time. Who knew bozos with balloons were part of a balanced breakfast? Before we get a closer look at the brand new NECA Toys Toony Terrors Killer Clowns from Outer Space Shorty, that's going to make for a long title. Let me go ahead and first thank the folks over at NECA that did provide this sample that we're about to have a look at. Grabbing now the tape measure, measuring right to the very top of Shorty's head. The figure in this case stands about 5 1/4 inches in height without knocking him over, or he's about 13. I'm going to go with 13 centimeters in height. And speaking of bozos, here's what Shorty looks like with the Toony Terrors remake Pennywise. In this case, stating the obvious, Shorty does come up a little short, as the figure only goes to about the shoulder section of Pennywise. And to bring in another bunch of weird-looking characters, here's what Shorty looks like with the Toony Terrors Beetlejuice. Here's what he looks like with the not-so-weird-looking Elvira. And here's what he also looks like with one of my personal favorites. This is the Toony Terrors Harry Warden from My Bloody Valentine. Shorty here does come included with one accessory, as you can see the popcorn bag that has 2 surprise heads sticking out. And he also comes with 2 display stands, though right now you probably only can see the one display stand off to the right side of him. I assure you though, there's a second stand on the bottom of the bag of popcorn, because really without that, the popcorn would fall and take a tumble. Don't believe me? You should really believe me. This stand actually does come off, and when you do take this first out of its plastic packaging, this stand is actually on the bottom of it. You may even in fact have seen it at the beginning of the review when I was taking the stuff all out of the packaging for the first time. Now, to have this separate, if you were just to put the popcorn down as it is without that stand, it's going to take a fall. Unfortunately, there's just so much weight above the popcorn that there's just not enough to allow that popcorn to stand on its own. So you really do need the display stand. If I then could add to this, I think the display stand, honestly, by the way, there's a peg right there and it plugs into the hole. But what I would say, though, is that the stand should have just been permanently molded to the bottom of the popcorn. Don't let this be something that you could lose by accident. Say, for example, you put these things back in a bag, you don't plan to display them. I don't know why you wouldn't want to display these, but if you decide to put this away at any given point and you happen to separate the stand from the rest of the popcorn, then unfortunately, the next time you decide to put this out on display, the popcorn's going to do the same thing it did at the beginning of this review. Oh, it's going to fall over. I think that was the sound. It was supposed to be the sound of a falling tree. Anyways, though, this should have been permanently attached to the bottom of this. It should have been on the bottom of the popcorn bag, and I know what you're saying. Then you would just notice that it's a display stand. Well, I'd much rather that than have the popcorn always falling over. As I say this, I'm going to take this off. I'm going to put this over here, and I'm going to look at it the entire... Okay, I'm not going to look at it through the entire review, but I'm going to know exactly where that is. I might just very well... I don't want to say the word glue, but I might very well just glue it on the bottom of it, because that way I'm going to ensure that I'm not going to lose it. What we're getting here, though, is a movie-style popcorn bag. Alternating stripes of red and the broader stripes of white. It's a nice looking popcorn bag. You can see there's some popcorn inside. I don't know if I would be fishing my hand in this anytime soon to be pulling out some random kernels. As you can certainly see, there's a few necks that are jetting out the top of it, and you can see some really sadistic looking clown faces. Now, when you're looking at them from the side, it almost looks as if the way that they've sculpted this, that you'd be able to open and close the mouth. And I don't think you can. I mean, even this side obviously is already open, so you're not going to be able to do much of anything with that. But the way they've actually sculpted this doesn't, in fact, look like you'd be able to open this. But I can't seem to open it. So it looks like it's probably just molded that way. Head sculpts are pretty good. You can see in both cases that the eyes are appearing to be closed. The colors are matching also with one another, sort of an off-white. Then you've got the pink there in the middles of, or the pink for the lips. Blue there, of course, for the eyebrows, and then you've got big pom-pom red noses. The only thing that's really different about them is then, again, that this one does have the open mouth, this one does a closed mouth, but also you can see, sticking out the top, sprouted, one in pink, sprouted, one in green. You got the hair there on the top of the heads. Now, the neat thing about these is that you can actually wireframe, well, they have a wireframe, so you can bend these. Unfortunately, though, even with the display stand, the first second I forgot where it was, even if you attach the display stand onto the bottom of it, you would just assume then that that's enough to stabilize this. Well, let's just go ahead and put this in for right now. If you have the heads too far forward, then the popcorn's going to result in doing the exact same thing you did earlier. Unfortunately, though, you always have to kind of bring the heads back a little bit. Even if you want to have them curl, you just want to kind of bring them back a little bit to compensate for the fact that, of course, the popcorn is small, and so is the display stand as well. That's the symbol, apparently, for small. So I like the fact that at least he comes included with something. He could have also come included with like the acid pie, for example, or perhaps even the cotton candy gun. But anyways, I'm glad at least they included something. Now, Shorty also does come included with a display stand too, although you can see right now, the figure does a pretty okay job of standing. Every once in a while, as you're putting him down, he might kind of wiggle a little bit, but he doesn't really need to use the display stand. But there's one included just in case. On the bottom of the figure's feet, you only have one peg hole, so you're just going to attach that onto the display stand. And more times than not, if they are going to come included with display stands, I usually then use them anyways to display the figure, just in case. If NECA seems to think that I need a display stand for Shorty, I'm going to take the advice of NECA. I'm going to use a display stand. For this, of course, I'm going to just remove this for right now. I guess we could probably keep the popcorn in frame. You know what? Let's move that out of the way. I don't want the camera to start focusing on that instead of focusing in on Shorty. And Shorty is a fine-looking killer clown. Now, I'm sure they probably could use this mold again to give us another one. Was Rudy, the other killer clown that has a very similar design than this? They probably could, again, reuse this mold. Maybe it's not even Rudy I was thinking of. It was the other one I was thinking of that has the blue hair. I mean, obviously, this mold, I think, could get a little mileage. That's the point I'm trying to make, that they probably could repaint this and make another killer clown. I don't know, though, necessarily if we're going to be getting any more killer clowns from Toony Terrors. I hope that means if we are going to be getting the one here with Shorty, that it means it opens the door then for future killer clowns. I'd like to get maybe at least 2 or 3 of these all sort of together. Proportion-wise, I mean, it sort of does look like a cartoon version of... Let me just move his arm out of the way. Sorry about that. Let me just show you guys his face. You know, it looks like a cartoon version of Killer Clown, but really not as to the extreme as maybe when we looked at the other Toony Terrors. The Toony Terrors, for most of them, I've noticed, really do look like they would inhabit the world. And I always use the reference point of Scooby-Doo, but it does look like something you would see from Scooby-Doo. This one actually looks a little more realistic. I've noticed it here in the face. I don't know what I would have done necessarily different. Maybe I would have made the eyes a little bit more larger. Maybe it's the eyes that are the deal breaker for me. Like if they made the eyes a little bit bigger, something a little bit more exaggerated that you would see in the cartoon, I think it would lend better to the idea that this guy looks a little bit more like a Scooby-Doo villain. As it is right now, I think the paints are really good on this one. You've got the very bright, vibrant green there on the back of his head. His hair looks like something, was it Mumbari? Mumbari from Babylon 5? Anyways, it does kind of remind me of that. You got the green hair there on the back there, little sprout of green hair sticking out the top, very bright, vibrant red in there on the cheeks. Of course, the big lips. I don't know why I was having a tough time getting out lips. Big lips, and you can see he's got some spiky teeth on the inside of that. So I don't want to get too close to this guy. Coloring is really good on this guy. I mean, very bright, very vibrant. Again, that doesn't just start and stop with his head. Obviously, when you look at the rest of the body as well, a very bright yellow suit. I like also that in this case, they didn't simply just paint the stars on there. Even if they did, it would have still looked good. But the fact that they actually did sculpt that on there is a nice touch. You got the green there bottom, purple on the top. It's a nice striping there, the red here on the sides. Very much kind of looks like Ronald McDonald. If you kind of just don't look at the top here, it looks like Ronald McDonald's body. Although this guy's not handing out hamburgers. He does have punching gloves in this case. They do have some articulation. Not as much, because obviously these Toony Terror figures don't tend to have a lot of articulation, but at least you can rotate the gloves back and forth. For the rest of his body, there's also some additional articulation. I think there's articulation a little bit, maybe not in the feet there, but very bright colored boots, like very bright kind of ice blue boots that he has also there as well. Also only one peg hole. So of course, when it comes to displaying this guy and you're putting him on the display stand, you really only have one choice to choose from. Now, for the articulation on these guys, Toony Terrors tend not to have a lot of posability for it. Now, in the case here of Shorty, he does have, at least to his credit, a ball joint. So you can move the head up, down, back and forth. And yeah, you can technically rotate it also all the way around. The shoulders do allow the arms at least to rotate up and back. But of course, obviously, the way they've sculpted the arms bent like this permanently, and with the punching gloves in the front, the boxing gloves are going to prevent the arms from going any further past his tummy. So you either can have the arms up, you know, like he's sparring, for example, which might probably be the way I'm going to display the figure, or you can also have the arms just slightly brought down, just a little bit like that. I prefer myself to have them a little higher up. That's just me. Gloves, as I already mentioned, do rotate all the way around. They seem to be only just on straight swivel joints. And while I don't know why I seem to think that the boots would be able to swivel. They don't seem to swivel. I think any little bit of twisting will ultimately just twist the boots right off and break them. And then you're going to be a sad clown. All in all, though, a nice looking figure. Again, I only hope that it opens the doorway. You know what? Where's the display stand? I just don't want this guy to fall over while I'm wrapping up things here. Well, I do hope this does open the door for maybe future killer clowns, whether it be the larger scale figures, retro cloth figures, or even at the very least, just more Toony terrors. I'm all open for the idea of more killer clown figures from the folks over at NECA. This one did turn out well. Don't think it looks as much maybe cartoony as the rest of the Toony terrors that we've looked at before. They seem to have like varying degrees. Some of them will look a little bit more like something you'd expect to see in an animated series. I don't think the killer clown looks as much like it, and I maybe think a lot of it has to do with the way they sculpted and painted the eyes. But still, though, a welcomed addition to my growing Toony terrors collection that have been released by NECA up to this point. Seeing as Killer Klowns from Outer Space Tiny does in fact share the same type of body here as Shorty, I think it would be safe to say that we probably could get ourselves a repaint. It's not that far off when you think of Toony terrors, because NECA has reused these molds before. Think of the bloody version of Michael Myers, the bloody version of Ash Williams. Both have already had a release of a Toony terror and then got re-released afterwards. They probably could do something very similar here with Shorty, coloring him, of course, a little bit different, giving him instead the green hair, giving him red hair instead of the yellow bodysuit, giving him a blue bodysuit, and then releasing this guy as a Tiny. Obviously, I think a chance would be there as well to change the accessory that comes included with the figure. So instead of having the popcorn bag with the snakes jetting out the top, Tiny probably could come included with like the cotton candy gun, or maybe an acid pie, or heck, why not? Even both. But I think there's definitely mileage to be made from this mold, and of course NECA does want to see some mileage out of these molds. Why not just release this figure at the very least as Tiny? What do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comment section. No, speaking of accessories, if we then just jump back here to the snake bag of popcorn, I don't know if I actually mentioned it in the review, but I did mention that there's the wireframe in the neck. I don't know if I actually did leave out the fact that there's actually ball joints in both of the heads. You can swivel the heads back and forth. You can only do so much though, because of the size of the stand that comes included with the popcorn bag. You wouldn't really be able to move the necks too far forward, but you can at least bend them, warp them slightly, and as long as they're kind of sticking straight up, the popcorn bag isn't going to fall forward. Shorty, though, does have limited articulation, which sort of goes with the territory of Toony terrors. You tend to have only like 5 points of articulation. Sometimes you even have 3 points of articulation. In the case here of Shorty, you got the head and a ball joint, swivels in the shoulders, swivels in the arms, nothing swiveling in the feet, but you get 5 points of articulation. I like the look of this figure. I don't know if I like it as much necessarily as the other Toony terrors. This one doesn't look as cartoonier. Does that make any sense? He doesn't look as cartoony as maybe some of the other ones we've looked at before. There's varying degrees of how accurate and how good some of these Toony terrors turn out. The majority of them I've really loved so far. There's every once in a while there are ones that sort of miss their marks. Not that I would say necessarily that Shorty misses his mark, but I think in this case he looks a little bit more closer to the movie, and he looks less like a Toony terrors version of a killer clown, if that makes any sense. Still, though, I'm very proudly going to be putting this guy on display with the rest of my Toony terrors that I have in my collection right now. And thanks to folks over at NECA Toys that did provide Shorty, we will be looking at the rest of this wave, which also includes the alien weird-looking business suit guy from They Live. Everybody remembers They Live with Roddy Piper. We will be looking at that one likely next. And there's also going to be the Teen Wolf. So there's, needless to say, there's going to be a lot of Toony terror stuff coming your way. If that's the kind of thing you'd like to come back to this channel for, first of all, I want to hit this video with a like. But if you do want to stick around for more, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, and that you're also turning on the bell notification. We are going to have a lot more NECA reviews coming your way in the pipeline, so there's definitely going to be a lot more coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.